Okay, let's get started. Thanks for your patience. We are just about 8 minutes late, which is like the subway these days in Tokyo. I think it used to be very much on time. Nowadays, we have so many accidents, it seems like. So, in most of, particularly during the rush hour, they're a little bit late these days, it seems like. But we'll start. Welcome to the Davos Experience in Tokyo, session number 14. And this is entitled The Role of Currency, the Prospect of Bitcoin. My name is Yoko Ishikura. I'm a freelancer. I was just going to say a professor at KO Media Design, but I retired at the end of March. So now I'm a freelancer and trying to be an independent consultant without any title. So my new name card has no title. It just has my email address and my website. And I am just sort of experimenting whether the individuals can make something happen in Japan, because this is such a status and organization-driven society. And I went to Kasumigaseki today, and because I'm a member of the working group for growth and development under the Council for Fiscal and Economic Policy, 経済財政諮問会議ね. And we have this sort of a subcommittee trying to figure out the future of Japan. And they usually have this sort of gate, and they check your ID, and I had no ID whatsoever with the photo. So I thought, well, probably they wouldn't let me in, but I managed to go in and make it. So, but I thought, because I use my maiden name for my professional use, so all my driver's license and other things are under my real name, legal name. So it doesn't say anything about Ishikura. So the only thing that has both is my passport. My passport has both. And you can do it, because I'm usually invited to overseas conferences under my professional name. And if I say, my real name is so and so, the organizers get very confused and stuff. So I understand that they can have both names. So my passport has both names. So that's the only thing that has my photo as well as my professional name and the real name. So that's the only official document that covers everything. And it turned out that my passport ran out of the pages because I make so many travel overseas trips. And finally, I had to get the additional pages. And I didn't know whether I had to renew the passport itself or not. And I checked the website, and it turned out to be that you can apply for 40 additional pages. So I must have used up more than 40 pages already. And so I have, my passport expires in 2017. So I still have like three years. And 40 pages should be enough for many more overseas trips. So that's enough for my ID and the Japanese society, where you need all the titles and real job. Without your real job, it's very difficult to rent an apartment too, you may know. And so it's very interesting, because you sort of have a glimpse of how the society is structured. What are the basic assumptions in the society? In this country, I think everybody is assumed to be a member of something. So if you're not a member of something, you may be in a little bit of trouble. But I think that in a way goes against this whole internet era, which we may be talking about. And I think the currency, the reason why we decided to do the Bitcoin is, I think it has another initiative or attempt to make the world with very much distributed, decentralized, without any sort of authority. And I was particularly intrigued by that aspect of Bitcoin. It's the same thing with internet. Internet sort of breaks all the boundaries, whether we are talking about national boundaries or the organizational boundaries, and I think the tax system and all the regulations are nationally bounded. But I think right now, because the technology cuts through all these boundaries, a lot of things are in big question. And I think the tax office, for example, the Japanese tax agency, doesn't like the people who have a lot of assets overseas. So they're trying to sort of make sure that you are taxed, whether, regardless of where you accumulate your assets. And in the same way, I think Bitcoin or the digital currency may open up a whole different world that goes beyond the national boundaries, beyond a lot of things which we used to think as an authority. And I think that aspect of Bitcoin was something that I was very much intrigued, because that opens up a whole new potential for the power shift, so to speak. But anyway, the reason why we decided to do the Bitcoin this time is because Bitcoin was in a hotly debated topic, particularly in the middle of March, when we had this big bankruptcy and all that. So I thought it would be quite interesting if we picked that particular topic. And I wanted to broaden the topic a little bit more so that we can cover the currency, the role of currency. Because we tend to, one of the Abenomics benefits, as it's called, is that we sort of made yen a little bit weaker. So yen is much weaker now, right now. So that helps the Japanese companies to have much better or competitiveness. And that was what was all about. That's part of the reason why the whole mentality of the Japanese society, as well as the private sector, has been sort of encouraged and has moved up. So how does the exchange rate determined? What is the role of the Japanese yen? Why US dollar is still a very strong and reserve currency? What's the role of it? What does it reflect? And all these things. So it's much broader than just the Bitcoin or alternative or digital currency. But I didn't know anything about Bitcoin, so obviously I can't lead the discussion. So I decided to have a guest for today. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce today's guest, Mr. Yoshimitsu Jimmy Honma. Yes, please. He's the president of Japan Digital Money Association. I didn't even know that they had this association. And I found out that he just started in January this year. Yes. So it's very recent. And he used to work for, if I may say, Fujitsu. So he's a sort of technology person. And when I was looking for somebody who could talk about Bitcoin in a very understandable, easy to understand way and in English, and with some technology implications, he came recommended. So it's a great pleasure for us to have Mr. Jimmy Honma. Thank you for coming. I was asking, how many of you have read or watched some of the video that I gave you? Okay, just one or two. Okay, so not too many. So we'll start off with a fairly basic stuff. What exactly is Bitcoin and so forth, okay? By the way, how many of you have been to Davos Experience in Tokyo before? Okay, so the rest is the first time. Okay, great. That's very good. And as I mentioned on my tweet, we have some students who represent different countries, and I wanted to make sure that it's much more international than just Japanese only, and because they may have a different perspective, and it'll be much more fun to have them. So Honma-san, we sort of talked about a few things. The way we proceed today is that I'll ask Honma-san very basic questions at the beginning, And we'll take a few questions from the floor, and then we would like you to participate in discussion. And we have sort of prepared several topics so that you can choose. And then we'll come back, and we may have, we would like each group to report back what they discussed. At the same time, we may have more questions for Jimmy Homa, and we would like to wrap up in that way. Okay? So let's start off with the basic question of what is Bitcoin?
It's a truly digital global money for the first time. It's very disruptive technology. So let's imagine currency itself is always digit. So currency itself is quite fitting with internet. But nobody is using money over the internet. But Bitcoin is designed to be distributed over the internet. Very useful.
Okay. So how does it work? I mean, if I am sort of doing some deal with the people overseas, for example, I give them credit card number, whatever, or I may be able to wire some money. So how does Bitcoin work?
Bitcoin, I have a wallet myself, and somebody has a wallet in South Africa or Africa or somewhere.
Yes.
I can specify 10 Bitcoin and specify his or her address, and one click, and it's going to be sent.
I see.
Quite
So
easy.
no banks, nothing, no credit card will be needed. For example, I have an editor who can edit my English writing, and she's in Australia. I never met her. And whenever I ask her, she charges. She sends me an invoice, right? So I say, okay, I'll pay. But obviously, she's independent, so we can't do the credit card transaction. So I had to go through this bank to send some money, to wire some money from my account in Australian dollars or Japanese yen. But that usually costs some money because the bank has to do all these transactions, and it tends to take some time. So if I have a wallet of Bitcoin and she has one, I can just send. And can she use it? I mean, like, I may have sent it, but unless she can use it for something else, that may not serve as a currency. So how does it? So that means if you better have a lot of people with the wallets of Bitcoin for the Bitcoin to become much more useful for many people. It's like a network effect.
Right. Basically, the number of the shop are increasing, which accept Bitcoin. So I can buy a book of a hotel, and I can buy CD, Porsche, house, condo, and I can buy US dollar or euro or Japanese yen. So it's becoming useful every day.
I see. So how do you tell when the business that you're buying something uses Bitcoin or not? Like, for example, I want to go on vacation during Golden Week, right? Everybody wants to go away because that's the very good time. So I wanted to reserve the hotel in somewhere, like, wherever, in Italy, Asia. And they usually ask you to give the credit card number so that they can just, block. They can make sure that I pay rather than, I do double booking and so forth. So instead, I can just give them Bitcoin. But how do you know whether this hotel accepts Bitcoin or not?
For the hotel side, the way to receive money is cash or a credit card or Bitcoin. If the company or hotel has some way to receive Bitcoin, there's a company which is called BitPay, and it's okay, I will receive Bitcoin, but customer will pay by Bitcoin, but I'm going to receive US dollar. So from Bitcoin to US dollar, BitPay, the company is exchange, transfer. Therefore, for the merchant side, there's no risk at all. Customer will pay BitPay. So hotel here,
Yes.
cash, credit card,
Yes.
Bitcoin. So customer will pay Bitcoin.
Yes.
But
So probably we are here, something in Japan, AB or Yoko, whoever.
okay, Bitcoin and BitPay is a company. So I pay 1 Bitcoin and hotel will receive $500. So for the hotel, there's no risk at all. Customer will pay Bitcoin, and the BitPay will change this into US dollar. So hotel will receive this money.
I see, I see. So this is like an exchange? Who manages, who operates this?
It's a US company. It's one of the biggest successful startup.
I see, I see. Then how is this sort of exchange rate determined?
So,
In other words, how is the price of Bitcoin determined?
so the price is always fluctuated because it's a highly volatile money.
Mhm.
But when I pay BTC, there's a rate, and that rate, okay, I will pay this US dollar,
Yes.
and the equivalent BTC will be defined by BitPay.
I see, I see.
And the transaction fee is much lower than credit card. Credit card, you will pay 2 to 3%.
Mhm.
BitPay, it's 1%.
I see, I see.
For the hotel, it's cheaper.
I see. Okay, so that's one sort of easy way. And if this hotel has a Bitcoin wallet, they will just accept. You can transact directly, or do you still have to go through the exchange?
Hotel will have an account here.
Yes.
I mean Bitcoin address. So customer will pay Bitcoin to this address, but eventually they will get US dollar.
I see, I see. But if they don't want, if there are so many hotels and other shops which has Bitcoin accounts, then you don't have to go through this.
So for the hotel, hotel has a choice to maybe he or she likes to receive Bitcoin.
Yes.
Because if I receive 1 Bitcoin, which is equivalent this US dollar,
Yes.
but one year later, maybe it's going to be 5,000 US dollar.
Right.
In that case, hotels should prefer Bitcoin
Right.
instead of US dollar. So it's hotel's choice
Yes.
to receive US dollar or Bitcoin.
I see, I see. And how many of these facilities or the institutions are there that accept Bitcoin as is?
I see. In Japan,
I mean, approximately.
in Japan, it's like 10,
Oh,
but
okay.
in US, 500, 700.
I see, I see. Is it increasing?
Yes.
What makes the institutions or merchants to join this?
Because this credit card is much more cost, and
Yes, yes.
sometimes hotel can not receive the money.
Mhm.
It's much more security-wise. Bitcoin is much more secure than credit card.
Yes.
So credit card actually is losing a lot of money because there's a attack.
Mhm.
I mean,
Cyber?
criminal organization can abuse credit
I
card.
see, I see.
But
Okay.
for the Bitcoin, it's not possible.
I see. Can you tell us which are the 10 institutions or shops in Japan that accept Bitcoin?
Yes.
Some examples?
Pink Cow in Roppongi, and the other bar around Roppongi, and there's a jujutsu dojo,
Martial arts, yes.
and a bakery store in Kobe, and
That's very interesting.
it's quite easy to start accept Bitcoin
I see. Why do they do that?
because it's cheaper than credit card,
I
and
see, I see.
it's the Bitcoin's price will be maybe 100 times bigger than now.
I see, I see. So it may have a value, asset value, which goes up.
Yes,
But it can go down too, right?
yes. But in the long term, it's basically growing exponentially.
I see, I see. What other aspects of Bitcoin is beneficial? I know we because of this company went under, I think we are, particularly in Japan, a lot of people are just scared. And it's a very risky stuff. You really don't want to touch it, even though digital currency as a term has some appeal. It's like an internet and so forth. But so what is the what other things can they do, or what's the risk of it?
So it's there's a network effect.
Yes.
Therefore, if more people use, the price will be higher.
Yes.
And it starts actually from scratch. I mean, it starts from paper. In that 5 years ago, at that time the price was 0, and now it's 500. And the market capitalization is exponentially growing. And application is becoming much more. User interface, user experience, it's growing because developers around the world, these developers are enthusiasts, and they are focusing on increasing user interface and user experience. Therefore, it's becoming much more easier every day.
I see. How many of you have Bitcoin? Okay. Can you explain? Okay. Carrie, can you explain? Yeah. Why you have it? How? Okay. I see. So that idea, just direct transaction.
Right. And some of them are in Vietnam and Thailand.
I see.
So we'd like to reduce the
Commission.
low commission and exchange risk.
Oh, I see. What about the other risk, volatility risk?
Well, as long as I'm working with my friends or those people that I know of,
I see.
wasn't that much problem.
I see. Many of you haven't touched Bitcoin. Why not? What sort of prevents you from? I mean, this is something that you hear about it, and probably not that much knowledge per se. What? Yeah.
It's I would like to.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of time.
I see. So you wait and see.
Kind of waiting for physical evidence of someone around me who actually tried it,
I see.
and that's really enough for me to jump in right away.
I see. And you don't, nobody around you yet.
Maybe I haven't opened my eyes yet.
I see.
Surgeon asked.
I see. So who would jump into the ocean, sort of, it's like a penguin or something? Once somebody does it, everybody else may do. What else?
As foreigners, I have a credit card that I can't use in Japan.
Mhm.
No one accepts that credit card. So
Yes.
having Bitcoin would be similar. Okay, I have Bitcoins in my pocket, and
Yes.
then I go to Starbucks there and I can't pay with Bitcoin.
I see.
So why should I?
I see. So it doesn't work as a currency. What else? Go ahead.
I think what will keep me right now is hearing that it's highly volatile, because that sounds like most of the growth so far was more speculation than anything else. And therefore I wouldn't rely on this actually.
Okay. So you wouldn't put your assets into the Bitcoin, or, I mean, not to mention that, but, just transaction, new transaction.
Yeah, I don't think until it has established itself as a stable currency.
Okay.
So, like you said, for me, the big thing is the data, the exchanges. So when you have Bitcoin and you want to exchange and you do another currency, should we say, the commission that the exchanges are less, but I think most of the US companies, there's no like UK companies, Japanese companies at the moment, and it kind of seems a bit, there's no standardized, you can go to different exchanges to get different rates and they're constantly fluctuating. It just seems a bit, the infrastructure at the moment seems a bit too sketchy to support any kind of big investment on a personal level.
Okay.
It would only be an experiment.
Okay. What else? Go ahead.
Talking about digital currency, there's a PayPal. I don't know if how many countries can use it, but it can serve as a digital currency, and then you can purchase many things with PayPal. I think the main difference is PayPal dollars don't appreciate, so it's like a $1 to $1, and it's associated with the credit card. So I'm curious why the Bitcoin decided to have exchange rate in the first place, as opposed to just staying as the face value.
I think this idea, right? Big thing. Somebody doesn't take the Bitcoin. They want to take it in the US dollars or whatever, the regular currency. The currency as we know.
My point is, if you're just looking for, the function of digital currency, the exchange rate is not necessary because as long as there's a foundation that people can agree, okay, this is $1, this is $10, then it serves the purpose. Why does it need to, change the exchange rate?
Okay. So probably, if we go a step further, having the exchange rate may hurt Bitcoin to go, really global.
I think so.
How do you respond to that? Because you wanted to, this is like a short-term solution to have an exchange rate, but over the long run, it's going to be an inhibitor.
But I think this is also what's giving it its value, that I can make money out of it later on,
Yeah,
if it's going to translate into actual money.
I see.
Because if it's going to stay online,
Yes.
it's not going to go out. Then, I don't know.
What can I do?
Yeah,
What can I do with this?
in the real life. I
Yeah,
guess.
okay, I see.
The point of it is to be a currency, so instead of having it turned into cash, you have it turned into tangible things to buy. Like the most expensive pizza in the world, I think, was bought with Bitcoin. And it, purchased that.
So I think what's making it more difficult for ordinary people is it has aspect of investment as well as just the pure currency.
Okay, so as an investment, you have much more, you feel much more risk because it's a personal thing.
And then you need to have a lot of knowledge to handle it.
I see. In what currency do you save or do you have your assets? In majority of your assets are in Japanese yen. How many of you have something else? Okay, I think most of the people. Let's see. What about you?
I worked in the UK.
Yes.
I have some British pounds.
I see. So you have quite a bit of percentage of your assets in British pounds?
Maybe 10%.
I see. Okay.
The rest is Japanese.
Okay. What's the risk of having everything in Japanese yen? I'm always very sort of scared. If you put everything in one basket, you're bound to be quite subject to this whole, big volatility and risk. And even though we think that the Japanese yen is pretty stable, who knows, right? And so the U.S. dollar, even though it's supposed to be a reserve currency, it's pretty much subject to a lot of things. So it's not as safe as we think it is. So in that sense, I think we sort of have an illusion. If we have U.S. dollars or if we have Japanese yen, that's safe. But when you come to think of it, it's not that safe. It's not that secure. What about PayPal? PayPal is much more secure, and it exchanges. How do
PayPal
you? Yeah.
is just using credit cards. So if we live in the internet age, but to send money is quite difficult still. PayPal, Amazon, Apple is almost dominating using credit card information, and it's quite difficult for me to send you money. With PayPal, it's possible, but still credit card is necessary. But with Bitcoin, it's P2P network and one click without any intermediary. So it's much more faster, easier, cheaper. So PayPal is just using credit card, and the credit card is developed before internet, and Bitcoin is invented for the internet.
I see. Okay, let's see. Who would usually, when something like this new thing comes up, somebody gets very scared, is threatened, because their job may be gone. And who are the ones in that sense? I mean, like banks, we don't need any more banks, probably. We don't need any more credit card companies. So it's pretty understandable that they really resist. Is that what's going on? Who else?
Western Union is the first company who is threatened by Bitcoin. Western Union, Singapore, I can send money to Africa or Thai or Vietnam or Philippines, but commission rate is 10%.
Through Western Union, you can send money. 10%?
I will lose 10% for commission.
Yes.
With Bitcoin, zero.
Yes.
So fundamentally, it's much more cheaper.
Uh-huh.
And Western Union's market value is right now $10 billion.
Yes.
And Bitcoin's value is $1 billion.
Yes.
Sorry. 100, it's 10 billion and the Bitcoin is 7 billion. So it's going to eventually replace Western Union's market. And the credit card, it's 200 billion. And credit card is also varying because it's almost the same function.
I see. So credit card, it's 200 billion, did you say? And Western Union,
10 billion.
10 billion.
7 billion now.
And it's
US
going
dollar.
up?
Yes.
So these people will be very much threatened.
Yes.
So if you work for the credit card company, you may have to worry a bit. And but what is the biggest obstacle for Bitcoin to become much more sort of used currency? What are the obstacles? I mean, other than those who threaten, who
Government.
get threatened. Government? Why is that?
Because as it's disruptive technology, it has a potential to compete with US dollar, euro, and Japanese yen. And actually, Chinese yen is already threatened because many rich Chinese likes to have US dollar or euro, but it's very difficult to send big amount. But with Bitcoin, it's one click. You can send 1 million or 10 million to US or Canada with one click. And you can buy US dollar or euro in United States or Canada. So Chinese government is actually regulating such capital flight. The capital flight with Bitcoin is quite easy.
I see. So
It already happened.
Okay, go ahead.
That we understand.
Mining? mining Bitcoin?
Yes?
I never understand how it works.
Okay. There's many fundamental technology behind this service. And I will send my Bitcoin to somebody. But before Bitcoin, double spending was possible. So if there's double spending, okay, if I have 1 Bitcoin, but if I can pay 10 Bitcoin, it will not work. But mining will stop such double spending. Mining is a basic technology to sustain Bitcoin whole system. So it's quite sophisticated.
Results in getting more Bitcoin. Is that right?
So mining is the fundamental technology to sustain the transaction, and why miner will provide such computing power, because they will get a reward. That reward is 50 BTC per 10 minutes for past 4 years, and next 4 years it's 25 BTC per every 10 minutes. And next 4 years it's going to be increased. Then eventually the total upper limit is limited like 21 million Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is, the total value of Bitcoin is limited because what miner can receive is limited and calculated in that way. So miner will sustain the whole transaction because they can receive Bitcoin as a reward. That's their incentive to sustain such a global P2P network.
Okay. Let me ask one more question to Homa-san, and then we'll break up into the other small groups. You are one of the enthusiasts for Bitcoin.
Yes.
And it seems like that the world consists of enthusiasts and those who hate him, or who resist at least, who don't jump onto this. Why? What makes you? Why are you enthusiasts? Tell us about why.
At first, I was not able to understand. I was not able to believe Bitcoin itself because it's quite disruptive. Nobody can immediately think that such thing can compete with US dollar or Japanese yen. But after starting to study about it, I'm more convinced it's working right now, and there's a market value right now. It's a reality, and if I have some suspicion, some doubt, I can study about it because it's open source. So everything is quite open. Everything is clear. A lot of information is already over the internet. You can study from any aspect. So I'm not good. I'm not very good at explanation, but somebody quite good at it is very capable of explaining everything. So I checked every risk for myself, and that risk is justified. So I have a strong believer of the future of the Bitcoin.
You mentioned that you have several sources, like business periodicals and so forth, to get the fairly good picture and easy to understand explanation of Bitcoin. Can you share that with us? I understand that as long as you depend upon the Japanese media, you get this very sensational articles. And we get so scared and, what's going on with this bankruptcy? Who is this guy who just remains, like a shadow man or something? So can you share with us what you look at to make you an enthusiast and to have much more confidence in Bitcoin?
1 year ago, I happened to see a video on YouTube. Some geek or some very famous engineer was talking about Bitcoin and the concept. And I thought that it was one of these many concepts. But I happened to read Wired magazine, And Wired is quite entertaining. And Wired, after reading Wired, I realized that it's a real. And after that, I searched all the Economist, Washington Post, New York Times, and Bloomberg, and Financial Times. Everybody is almost very positive. So actually, it's quite positive context. So on the other hand, Japanese newspaper is completely opposite. So I was kind of shocked because so much different, almost opposite.
I see. Okay. Okay, let's. I realize that some of you, or probably majority of you, are still like in the cloud, not really understanding what Bitcoin is all about. But let's give it a try and see what happens. And I think I asked Honma-san to tell us a few aspects of Bitcoin, from which angle, which sort of point of view can we talk about. The technology is one of them, because it's an open source, because it's digital currency, and the mechanism itself as well as the implications. When you have this type of distributed open source rather than the centralized currency system, what kind of implications does it have? That's one. And price, as he mentioned, as an investment, it's a very high volatility. So what do we do with this price then? And also the legal aspects. It sort of goes beyond any regulation per se, because we don't have any regulation, right? We can't really regulate the exchange, the Bitcoin. And we also have the social aspect of it. What kind of things? I think as has been mentioned, if you want to have a peer-to-peer transaction across national boundaries, in the developing countries, for example, you could do it. So that has some kind of social implications. And that's very much related to global agenda. Because I know in Africa and other countries, not too many people have a bank account. So they have cash, right, so to speak. And does the Bitcoin, which is open source and technology, has a very quite good, seems like, technological mechanism. Does it provide more value to the people who are sort of at disadvantage today in the developing world? Because of this whole financial system with banks and credit card system, which has been pretty much dominating the whole transaction. So that's the social aspect of it. So, and tax, we'll forget about tax because that's too complicated. So why don't we say we have 4, and how many people are there? Probably we can divide into, let's do technology in that group, and price volatility in the second group, and legal aspect, and social, and technology, probably legal and social. And you can go to any one of these groups, and that you like, and discuss. Try to discuss, because I don't know, I'm not sure whether we have enough information or not. But you can call Honma-san if you have any questions, and try to get some ideas going, okay? So this is technology, this is price, that's legal, and over there is social, technology, price, and social, I believe. I think that's what I said. So you can take your chair, you go to any one of the groups, and see what we can come up with. We'll spend about half an hour or so.